care what you heard, don't care what you heard. I'm taking it all cause I want the world. Yeah, I want the world. Yeah, I want the world.
All right, what's going on, everybody? Today we have a great guest. He's a really motivational person. He is a guy you want to listen to if you want to take your life and your leadership skills to the next level. Would you like to introduce yourself and what you do?
Hello, Kai. Thanks for having me on the show. My name is Orson Wells. I am a leader and life coach advisor. I help leaders really become exceptional in life and leadership. That's kind of really the big part of what I do, working with individuals, organizations to help leaders impact the teams and ultimately the organizations that they work for and accomplish their goals. And one of the things I find I really help leaders do is not only be exceptional in their role as a leader, but also be exceptional in life as well. Because, you can only be as good as you are, so those two things coming together is what I really help leaders do.
Awesome, man. So let's go by definition. What is a leader to you, and what is a leader's job?
Well, that's a really great question. And I have a few things when I think about leadership that I'm personally influenced by. One of them is John Maxwell said that leadership is influence, you know, and he said, I think the actual quote goes that leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. And I truly believe in that as far as, that is what leaders do. They influence people. But I also believe that leaders, I think it goes another step beyond that because one of the other things that I really think that leaders do is inspire others to want to struggle sometimes in leadership towards some type of goal where they see themselves
Mm,
prospering because of the fulfillment of that goal, whether it's in an organization, whether it's socially. Leaders impact the lives of other people. And I think it's and that's why I'm so focused on leadership is that, because when leaders can make an impact in the lives of the people that they lead, it's exponential because then those people are attached to other people, whether it's their family or other people that are friends, their whole circle. And so it's kind of this exponential effect. So leaders influence people to kind of sometimes even struggle to accomplish really strong goals.
So you talk about being a leader. I believe to be a good leader, you must first lead yourself and earn respect to people. A lot of managers, business owners, even parents, because obviously parents are definitely leaders as well.
Hmm.
They want to use their title and demand respect. It's leading with ego instead of heart and example.
Yeah.
What other components are key to being a great leader, whether that's just leading your own life better or leading your children or leading a massive company? What is it those great components that make you a great leader?
When you think about components that make you a great leader, one of the things that I first think of is exactly what you said, is leading yourself first. Because leaders set the example for other people. And that's one of the things when I'm coaching an individual, when I'm working with them, that's one of the first things that I look at. Because oftentimes someone will come to me and we'll have a conversation about what are your needs. We'll have, kind of do this whole intake conversation. And they'll say, well, this is the problems I'm having with my team. This is what's going on in my organization and all of that. But one of the things where it gets really down to is that leader self-aware of how they're impacting the environment that they're in? Because believe it or not, when you have an organization and you have someone at the head of that organizations, even as adults, as grown, educated, experienced adults, we still play follow the leader. What the leader does becomes acceptable behavior, and we follow that example. And so when you talk about, if I was going to like narrow it down, is that leader is being able to first of all have self-awareness, and going back to the point that you made, is being able to lead themselves first. And what that means is being able to set the example, set the tone for the environment that they want within the group of people that they're leading, because that's so important. And then there's other things like emotional intelligence. There's, being able to communicate a strong message, being able to relate to other people. Also, those things come in. And one thing that you'll notice about leadership, it's not so much that you're the technical expert as much as you're the people expert. And I think that's a really key thing with leadership, that it's more about how you're impacting the lives of people.
I think that's a really powerful one alone because obviously we know a lot of people that they work in their jobs and they really don't like their managers.
Hmm.
Because obviously like some of those managers they don't take the time to get to know their employees, get to know like okay, what is your strengths? Let me help find it out. Let me help amplify that strength. What are you weak at? Let me help you with that. What else you need help on? Where else
Yeah,
can I put
exactly.
you in this position? Yeah. So even more so than knowing what are key components to being a good leader and leading yourself, I believe everyone also should know what pitfalls to watch out for. For example, like too much ego or becoming arrogant or thinking you're always right. What are some common problems, mistakes, and pitfalls of leading yourself and becoming a great leader? Like, what are those things a leader should watch out for from when they first start, or even before they start, to during their journey to becoming a great leader?
Yeah, that's a great question, and even connecting back to what you said, kind of leading up to the question, is the big thing that I didn't kind of emphasize there is empathy. Is having empathy for the
Mm,
people that work for you, understanding what it's like to walk in their shoes. So if you're leading a group of people, I know we talked a little bit before the show started, and all in kind of your environment where you have a lot of things going on. You're in Las Vegas, and there's a lot of moving parts to an event, to something happening. What does it really take for those people that are following you, that you're giving instruction to, you're providing vision to accomplish those things? How difficult is it? Are you in touch with that in a way where you can empathize with the challenges they may have in doing it? So that's a really big component of leadership, is having empathy, being able to show empathy, and also communicate that empathy, show the people that you care. And that leads into actually one of the problems or pitfalls, especially people that, you get into a leadership role. And a lot of times where you think of it, a leadership role, let's say within an organization or company, it's more money, it's more prestige, you get recognized and those kinds of things. And what sometimes leaders fall into is forgetting why they got into that role in the first place. Why
mm,
did you say yes to getting into a leadership role? Why did you say that, hey, that's something that I want to do. That's something that I want to be involved in. Because you know, if it is just about money and prestige and all of those things, you lose sight of the fact that one of the basics or responsibilities of leaders is that you're interacting with people. And I find a lot
mm.
of times that sometimes we get so, I think we could be mission focused and people focused simultaneously, but sometimes leaders get into that phase where they are maybe a little bit, not focused on the people actually doing the work sometimes, and what it takes and the challenges they have. And that's why it's important for leaders to be able to connect with the people that they lead.
It reminds me of that one quote. I forgot who said it. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, how important is it to determine what type of leader you want to be before you start trying to become one? Like, did you do that yourself, or what was your process of becoming who you are now when you first started before you had any experience with leadership or anything like that?
Yeah, so that is a really great question, because I think that is, whether you've been leading for years or you've been leading for a short amount of time, knowing what type of leader you want to be is key. And it goes back to the question before this, kind of what are the pitfalls, is you got to realize that you're making an impact in the lives of people. You are impacting, we all maybe grew up in an environment where people complained about their boss, people complained about those things. It really impacts your life. And if you sometimes you don't value good leaders until you've worked for a bad leader. And
Mhm.
and we've all probably had, experiences like that. And one of the things
Mhm.
that I think is very important for leaders to understand is their own set of values, and their own set of, what do I want to be as a leader? And I'll go back to, again, like when I work with leaders, that's one of the things I really focus on is helping leaders find their voice. In other words, who do they want to be as a leader? And this, not to sound this, not I don't make this sound morbid, but how do you want to be remembered as a leader? You know,
Mhm.
what do you want people to say about you when they're maybe no longer working for you, no longer working in your organization or with you? What do you want them to say about you? Well, how do you want people to interact you? What do you want to be remembered as a leader? Someone that helped other people grow and do things, or one that was, all the negative things. And so I think it's essential for leaders to do that. And for me, it kind of happened over time. um of course, I've had some different leadership roles over my career, and one of the things that was always important to me was that I was an example to the people that I led, that I was, working with them in a way that helped them succeed, that I was positioning them for success because that's what my values are. And the more a leader can get in touch with what their values are, it's going to then help their behaviors follow. If you follow your values, you'll figure out what behaviors you need to do. And having a good coach is always a good thing.
Right, right. And that alone, obviously, that's a powerful question. What type of leader do I want to be, and what do I want to be remembered
Hmm.
for? Those two alone, and also leading by example, because I feel like a lot of people who are in those positions of power, they're not leading by example. Obviously, we can all think of the boss that we've worked for, and probably in several different jobs that it was just more of a "do as I say, not say as I do" type
Right.
thing, and so I feel like that element alone is missing in a lot of people in powers, leadership positions.
Hmm.
But something you had said before, you said you brought up John Maxwell.
Yeah.
So in John Maxwell's book, The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, he
Yes.
starts with number one, the law of the lid,
Hmm.
and this is massively important. The leader in a relationship of a classroom, a business, a family, everything obviously rises and falls with the leader. So with that being said, to be a great leader, I believe you always have to be constantly developing yourself.
Hmm.
What are some ways people can keep developing themselves as a leader or in their own personal lives or whatever it is in business or at their job or anything like that?
Yeah.
What are some great ways to develop yourself?
Well, one of the things, and this is I forgot who originally said this, but it's one thing that's very common, if you will, in leadership development or training that people say is that leaders are readers. I think
Mm,
people the more that you read, the more you learn and grow. But also, I think it's kind of the even just the whole overall attitude of a leader saying that, I haven't learned it all. Just because I may be the boss, I may be the CEO of the organization, I'm at the top of the food chain, doesn't mean that I know everything about leadership. And I really saw this modeled, and even in some of the organizations that I've worked in, where leadership programs, that leader was sitting right at the table in the key leadership program that we ran. He was right in at the table learning with the rest of his leadership team, saying we want to learn some of these skills and these things to be a leader. So I think that's one of the biggest things is just have that mindset of being able to learn, because if you if you ever feel like you know it all, that's when you really start failing. You're going to fail more because you feel like you know it all. And then also a leader, one of the things, the leader doesn't have to know everything. So he learns from the people around him. I always think that leaders should hire even and surround themselves with people that are bigger experts in certain areas that they're not. If I was hiring someone with more technical ability than I have, I'm going to defer and learn from them, and that's going to make me a better leader. So the ability to learn, so things that's more practical, like reading, going to different training courses. There's no lack of information in the society that we live in. But then also one of the things, and I don't want to make it feel like I'm like self-promoting here, but one of the things is, I mean, that I've seen where leaders really make a leap here is having a strong leadership coach. and someone that
Mhm.
has, not only just, kind of went and got a certification, but somebody that's kind of walked through a lot of the things that leaders go through, because it is a struggle, sometimes to, in the moment, be able to navigate the challenges of growth and change and hardship. So imagine being a leader right now, um, in the time that we're living in the day of COVID, where you're having to make tough decisions about how many staff you keep and how do you keep the business going and how do you do all of these things, and or if your business is going, how do you continue to grow and prepare for these changes, communicate and keep your head on straight. So having, oftentimes leaders don't realize how much they may need an outlet outside of, just, they can't go vent to their, people at home, their family members, their spouse, their significant other all of the time, and get that really good objective advice. Sometimes you do need a coach. And I think, when leaders take the time for
Mhm.
development, they take the time and invest in coaching, I think those are the leaders that really excel in life and in leadership.
So investing in a coach, admitting when you don't know everything, and
Absolutely.
having all those other leaders around you to look up to.
Yeah, all of those things I think comes into play, and the leaders. I mean, I've worked in organizations long enough where I've seen a leader go from, kind of that, frontline high performing contributor all the way up to a director level, and the ones that I've seen being able to do that, or the ones that were, you know would come in and say, whether it was a one-on-one, they'd be like, I don't know what I'm doing. Here's what's going on. I don't know what I'm doing. And these are the thoughts I had, these are the thoughts that I have. This is what I'm thinking. And when you have a leader that, like you said, they can admit, sometimes I don't know what I'm doing, but I still need to figure it out. So that leader
Right.
that kind of says, I'm going to learn this along the way, but you have that drive to say that I want to learn, I want to grow, I want to sometimes even, figure it out. I was gonna quote this early on, and I just kind of, I flipped through my stuff and I said, "Oh, here it is," because I wanted to quote it correctly. But one of the books that's really impacted me as far as how I think about leadership is called The Leadership Challenge, and the authors are Kouzes and Posner, two guys that wrote the book, and they define leadership as is the art of mobilizing others to want to struggle for shared aspirations. And when you think of
Mm,
that, you think of, how do I as a leader put people in a position to want to struggle for this shared
mhm.
aspirations? So I'm mobilizing them to want to struggle, but it's about that shared aspiration. How do I make this big company goal not just about the company, but also about them as individuals? How do I get them to see themselves in that vision? And I think that's where leaders could, continually develop, and that's something that you continually learn. And like I said, those leaders that I've seen excel throughout their career are ones that say, I'm going to continually try to keep learning how to do this. And oftentimes it pays off.
Why is it that these people won't? Why some people in positions of leadership won't admit when they're wrong? Do you think it's fear of losing respect from their the people under them or the people who are following them, or what is it exactly that makes someone not want to admit, like, hey, maybe I don't know it, but maybe I can go find out from I'll find out for you for sure. I won't
Hmm.
let you go without this knowledge that you need.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think sometimes it's pride. Sometimes leaders don't
Mm,
want to admit that they're wrong or that they don't know. And what I've
mm,
seen is leaders tend to struggle and spin their wheels when that happens, because as a leader you're not going to have all of the answers. What you do have is, how do you then begin to find the answers? And the thing is, there is oftentimes leaders, you're going to find the answers in your team, within your team. So
mhm,
if I was a leader leading a group of people, and we got to a point or a challenge that I had no idea how to face that challenge, but I have a group of people that are on the front lines of that challenge, who probably has the best set of ideas? The team,
Mhm.
the people that are facing that challenge. And if a leader, feels that sense of pride that they can't do that, that's definitely a challenge for them. But where they can find success, where they can find, how some ideas on how to face this challenge, on what do we do, are the people that are doing the work, the people that are on the front lines of facing those challenges every single day. And so, yeah, that's definitely a big pitfall for leaders when they don't realize that they have that resource actually right in front of them.
It's really weird because if I've seen very few leaders actually do that.
Mhm.
But when I have seen them do that, admit, "Hey, I don't know right now, but I'll find out for you. Just give me a few, I'll let you know by this date." I actually respect them more because obviously I can relate to them more. I can be like, "Oh, well, he doesn't know, but he's actually willing to take the time to do it for me, and he's willing to be strong enough to admit that he doesn't know."
Mhm.
So I actually respect them more and want to follow them more because, especially if they come through being like, "Here's the information you need that I promised you by this date."
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, you just showed me so much, leadership right there, and that you made me want to follow you even more and listen to you. So it's kind of ironic that people don't, some people in those positions don't do that because I believe it actually leads to increased respect and following.
Mhm. Well,
But I wanted to, oh, go ahead.
oh, good. No, I was gonna say it goes back to the question you asked earlier, and you're asking really good questions, by the way. Is what kind of leader do you want to be? Do I want to be a leader where everything just is on my shoulders, or is this, going back to that quote, the quote that from the Leadership Challenge book, is that it's shared aspirations. So we're sharing this victory, we're sharing this goal, and the most successful leaders are the ones that can help kind of motivate and bring people along with them rather than they stand up there and say, "I did it." It's more so that we did it.
So I wanted to get your perspective on this.
Okay.
I call it starting from zero. So I believe one pitfall of leaders or influencers is thinking that because they're in the position that they are, how many people know them or follow them, how popular they are. This automatically entitles them to respect sometimes.
Mhm.
I believe is respect is earned starting from zero, one person at a time. So for example, it doesn't matter how many people know you, how many millions of followers you have on, Facebook or Instagram or whatever it is, like the second you come in contact with somebody who hasn't met you yet, you're starting from zero with that person, meaning you still have to build it up. You can't expect some of your previous accomplishments or whatever it is if this person doesn't know you, or even if they do know you. What happens if you come at them with the wrong type of attitude or whatever it is? Automatically, all of that leadership and all that respect, you just lost it
Mhm.
from the beginning. So I believe with each person, you have to start from zero.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
No, I think that's a very interesting. I love how you put that. You're starting from zero. That's a really good. You can apply that to so many different scenarios in leadership. And what it makes me think about is, going back to on why you're leader in leadership in the first place. And I think leaders are there to serve. So
Right.
so Kai, if we meet for the first time face to face and we shake hands and we interact, and maybe I'm the CEO of the company and you're, frontline associated my company, then
Mhm.
I wanna if I have the mind to serve, that I'm serving you as a leader, then I'm gonna ask you questions about you. I'm gonna get to know who you are. All of those different things in order so you could feel part of this larger team or organization. Because if that's what I want as a leader, and so this whole concept of that, like you said, it starts from, you're starting from zero every single time. I think that is so true in, you know, in leadership and in our day and age of, like you said, like influencers and in Facebook and Instagram and all of the social media, is we have these people that we say are leaders, and I'm not going to argue whether they are or not, or in in any way like that. But what I will say is that you're not getting to know those people that are liking your posts and all of that. But it is, how do you then now serve those people, if you're consider yourself a leader? And what I've seen a lot of people, if you think about influencers, are getting into those comments and saying, how can, even though we're disconnected by miles, but we're so close by technology, is how can I begin to
Mm,
serve those people that are following me and liking my posts and coming from a place there, so that my posts are something that's serving the greater good, serving the people that are following me. Even if I'm an influencer that's selling something, am I selling something that I would buy and use myself? All of those things kind of come into play. So yeah, I love the concept of, you're starting from scratch. You're starting from zero every time.
right. I say that because I've also noticed a bunch of because I've had several interactions with influencers, and maybe they're already established like a very well name for themselves.
Hmm.
And I'll comment on something, just kind of asking a question. But I've been surprised by how many times that I've had an influencer actually respond back, but they come from a more place of ego or arrogance or something like that. I'm like, wow,
Hmm.
you just lost followers, and you're continuing to lose followers by acting in a certain way. So I believe humility is really important for a leader.
Yeah.
But also, so we both know a leader bears massive responsibility to his team, to his people, whoever he's leading, and to himself. So, what are some good ways a leader can cope with the stresses of being, holding that responsibility for others and themselves and the people they're leading?
Yeah, the first thing that I will say is every leader needs to have compassion on themselves. If you think about it, that is a tremendous responsibility. Leaders need also, when I say have compassion on themselves, and let's just say the leader is one like we're talking about, like we're the conversation that we're having, they emulate a lot of the qualities that we've already been talking about. And so that leader also needs to understand that at times, they need support. They need help.
Mm,
They need those things. And so when you think about that, I think that's one of the biggest things that leaders need to focus on also is having compassion on themselves and having a place to go. One of the things that I think is important is to lead for leaders to surround themselves with other leaders as well, people that are going through
mm,
those same challenges and have that type of outlet where they can have conversations about the ups and downs of leadership, because it's not something sometimes that you get from the people that you lead as much as you'll get from people that are similarly situated as you are. And I think that's one of the biggest things that leaders can do. But then also is creating boundaries for themselves in the sense of, you know making sure that they have this balance. And so in the things that I do, when, if it's for my podcast to the content that I create, all of those things, I talk about life and leadership. And the reason I did that, starting out, I was like, I'm going to just, teach. I've been working in leadership. I've been doing this all these years. I have all these, things that I can teach about leadership. But one of the things years ago, I had taken on a manager position of a training team. And one of the things that started happening, we were implementing all of these new things and had all these different projects going on. But what I noticed about myself was that after a few months, I began to gain weight. I was
mm,
unhappy. I was, while I was performing well and getting the job done, and what I would think looking back, I was a good leader, but I was not healthy. The team was healthy.
mm,
The things that were happening, the projects were going on without a hitch. There was, good success moving forward. But one day I sat down at my desk, and not to be too graphic or anything here, but I sat down at my desk and I felt like this thing in my torso. And I was like, "Oh my gosh,
mhm.
wait." And sometimes when you sit down and if you gain some weight, then there's something there in your torso. And I
Right.
just had to I stopped where I was like, and I'm one that I work out, I exercise, I try to eat as best, as clean as I can sometimes, and all of that. But I noticed I was gaining weight, but it was a picture also of what was going on inside. I was neglecting
Mm,
myself. And so when I decided to say, I'm going to begin to talk about leadership more on social media and all that, I said, I'm going to have to talk about life and leadership. I can't just focus on people having these great leadership skills and being able to communicate with the masses and do all these great leadership things if they're not also taking care of themselves. And so
Mm.
that's one of the things I think is so important, is that leaders also need to take care of themselves, because if I am not good, I'm not going to be able to help someone else. If my mental health, my physical health is suffering, then I'm not going to be in the best place to then begin to help someone else. So I have to take care of myself as well.
I love that you said that because one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about the pitfalls too is because I believe that I see a lot of influencers and leaders. They talk about all their successes, all their all the positivity of what they do,
Hmm.
but I rarely, very, very rarely see them talk about the failures, the the mess ups, the problems they have along the way. And I believe that's where all the real juice of everything is because anybody following in your footsteps, they're going to see that and they're going to hear you talking about it and they're going to be like, "Oh man, I'm going through that right now. I'm going through that right now." He's like, I can relate to him so much more because he's not trying to portray himself as this perfect person who never struggles, who never, he just lives and breathes success every second of his life.
Hmm.
So that's also why I want to talk about pitfalls because I believe in those pitfalls and all the weaknesses. That's where people can relate more, and there's a lot more of a following you can build up when talking about those things. But so with that being said, obviously, we have all struggled with self discipline. So, not wanting to get out of bed in the morning,
Yeah.
not working out or going running because we don't feel like it, not sticking to that diet or completing that assignment on time, whatever it is.
Hmm.
Where does discipline start, and how can we better cultivate and build our self discipline so that we do what we say we will do? No excuses.
Let me make sure I want to make sure I cover excuses in a minute. But, just
Okay.
no, because I think it's important when you talk about discipline, because one of the things, and you've probably heard in some of my videos, is that I do talk about discipline. I talk about that is really kind of the key for growth and change, is to be disciplined about whatever your goal is. You're going to be more successful when you are consistent, and all of those things. That's you have to be disciplined, and I believe people need to live a disciplined life. But the little twist in there is that you also have to give yourself room, and I say have compassion on yourself, to be human. You're not going to hit the mark every single time, but at the same time you want to push yourself to hit those marks. That's where I believe that, especially around goal setting and things like that, one of the key things to stay disciplined is to develop some routines and habits. It takes a while to develop, those habits. And so if I had some type of goal, whether it was, lose weight, gain weight, start a business, do whatever it is, you want to think about it incrementally, as opposed to
Mm.
this is this big huge goal I've got to do, and got to do all of this work. Well, break it down into what you need to do every day. So if I wanted to, what's a goal that we could talk about? I'll give you a good example.
Like for example, working out is obviously a very popular one. Some people they're like, "Oh, I don't feel like it," or the
Hmm.
morning comes, they tell themselves the night before, "Okay, tomorrow I'm gonna work out." And then tomorrow comes and their alarm goes off and they don't want to get out of bed, and they just want I was like, okay, maybe I'll do it tomorrow for sure tomorrow." And then tomorrow comes and like, okay, let me just I'll do it sometime for sure this week.
Yeah,
I'm too busy right
I'll
now.
start on Monday. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
they're like,
exactly.
there's, make tomorrow Monday. Um, so
Mm,
yeah, that's a great example, and that's actually one of those examples I think applies to everyone. Not everyone trying to start a
yeah.
business, but I think we've all at some point struggled with working out, or even wanting to work out. And
Hmm.
so the thing is that, and I think really sets you up for success and to be disciplined, is that make it incremental, rather than I'm going to go to the gym every 5 days a week. Okay, I'm going to go to the gym. Let's say it's tonight,
Hmm.
tomorrow, and so what
Hmm.
do I need to do? What habits and routines do I need to put in place? One might be, let's say I'm going to go in the morning. I'm going to go in the morning before I start my day, and one of those habits might be, you know having a good bedtime. I'm going to go to bed at 10 o'clock and make sure I get my sleep. I'm going to get up at 5 a.m. and but what is and develop that as a habit. So going to bed, getting up, and then getting to the gym, and you just commit to that. You commit to those incremental things. And that's one of the things, whether you're talking about a big organizational goal, a big personal goal that you have, when you break it down like that and say, and make it really simple. I'm gonna, go to bed, get up at 5, head to the gym. And you can get even more complex with that, as far as like, I'm going to lay my clothes out and all those kinds of things. But I think why people get overwhelmed with goals that they have a lot of times is because they focus on the big end goal. I want to lose 20 pounds. I want to gain muscle in a six pack. And you forget that that happens incrementally over time as opposed to overnight. And so you have to make
Mm,
daily decisions in order to become disciplined. And the thing is, even about excuses, when I do this personally, but even when I work with people, is, I have a thing about, excuses, but sometimes excuses are explanations. They're not, you say, okay, this is why it didn't happen. I didn't make it to the gym in the morning because I didn't go to bed on time. Now you know what your problem is, so you fix the
mm.
problem.
That's a great one right there that you just said. And knowing what the problem is. Okay. Yeah. And do you think people should kind of, let's say, starting from the bottom, do you think it's more important for people to just kind of make those small little goals? Not like, like you said, like get a six pack and abs and all that stuff, but
Hmm.
like maybe, hey, I could walk 1 mile, every like 2 to 3 days out of the week, whatever it is. I could go
Hmm.
to the gym once a week. I could go, I could do this. So I feel like the more that you can start those small little goals and the more you can actually stick with those small little goals, you start developing more self-confidence. You start trusting
Yeah,
yourself more because you start doing what you say you will do.
yeah. No,
So
you're right on right there. Absolutely.
let's get some practical advice. So, to someone who wakes up and says, man, I'm tired of this life. I hate my job. I'm not making what I want. I don't like my relationship. How does that person go from that point to having a more fulfilling and more happy life?
Yeah, you talked about earlier, kind of people being authentic and transparent. So I'm going to be transparent with you. I have been there. So
Right.
at different points in my life, to be honest with you, in my life and career, I started my career as a teacher, and I had a kind of that point there. I've worked in organizations, had that different point happen, different times. And where I started was really thinking about, what do I want? And people don't, sometimes it's underestimated, the power of your own desire, because a lot of times we try to live up to the expectations that society or other people or our family or someone else sets for us. And a lot of times that ends up us being, sometimes we get at that point that you were talking about, where we're questioning everything in life because we've tried to live up to that standard. Sometimes we get there
Mm,
because sometimes, let's say, a season of our life ends, and sometimes that season of life is, working at this job, doing this type of work, doing, this specific type of thing. Sometimes that season ends and something in us is saying there's something greater for you out there. And so that uneasiness is a time to change. So when you find yourself at a point where you're saying, I'm at a point in my life where now it's time to change. It's time to grow. It's time to do something maybe even different or enhance what I'm doing. I think sometimes, especially in our fast paced world, it's time to be still and listen. Sometimes be still and listen to the voice inside you. Listen to that still small voice inside you, and really ask yourself the question of, what do I want to do? What is truly my desire in life? Because that's where it's going to start. And I mean, it's not as it's it's sometimes it's that question of, where do you want to be in 5 years? But it's asking yourself the question, what do I want? Because that uneasiness is there for some reason, and whatever that reason there, you're going to find it in yourself. And so, from some aspect, I think of it as, that's almost like God speaking to you and saying, this is a point for change, this is a point for growth, and you got to get still and listen to yourself on what that is, because sometimes we get so busy doing everything that we actually miss life and it passes us by.
So, would you say that another good question to ask, also beside what do I want, is what do I not want? Because I feel like a lot of people can easily say that as well, like a
Hmm.
lot more easily than if they, even if they don't know what they really want.
Yeah,
I for sure can bet that they know what they don't want. I don't want this. I don't want this life. I don't want to, this weight on me that's just not coming off.
yeah.
I don't want, whatever it is. I think they could say that more. So I think that would be also a good point to start at. Do you think so or no?
No, no, I think you're absolutely right. And actually, that is, I think that's a big thing too. That's the other side of that step is, what do I want? What don't I want? I don't In a year, I don't want to be in the same position that I am now.
Mm,
And so if I'm someone's in that spot where they're questioning everything, I want to be I want to have a new job. I don't want to do the current type of job that I'm doing now. And what I don't want is to be in the same role next year. Because when you answer that question, then you're getting to a point where you're thinking about, then how do I now begin to move forward? And then you begin to plan and set goals and do all those things. But it opens up when you ask yourself those really powerful questions.
yeah, you're saying a lot of good things here, man. But so what are some common obstacles people will face in developing themselves to living a better life? So, for example, let's say that person who is starting from zero, they've determined what they wanted. They say, "I want this life. I want this. I want this. This is exactly how I want. This is how my life looks if I'm happy and fulfilled." So
Mhm.
what are some common obstacles? Like for example, obviously the pull of the old, your old environment,
Mhm.
whoever your friends were, they're going to keep pulling you back to that same old environment. Some of your family even is going to pull you back. Those are two massive obstacles you're going to have to
Yeah.
face to overcome, that situation. What other obstacles are pretty common in getting past that, to where they can actually move forward and, they can know what they're going to go through before they start going through it to move forward in life.
Yeah, I think a lot of things that people struggle with is, and I'll combine this is kind of really two things, but confidence that they can have what's that next level of life is, often people see, let's say they see you doing great things in life, and they say, well, maybe I can never do that. I can never do something like that. And they don't see that within themselves, the greatness in themselves. And so it's sometimes that level of self-confidence and saying, that's where clinging on to, and I would just say the old life or the what they don't want is so appealing, because they're actually afraid of what's next or what's new. It's uncharted territory, something you've never done before.
Mm,
And because the question there is, sometimes when you want something great in life, it's going to cause you to evolve into. And when I say another person, I'm saying someone that's maybe more disciplined, someone that's maybe more bold, someone that's, maybe a little less afraid to do, put themselves out there, or those things. It causes you to evolve into that. And so sometimes people are afraid of that growth. And and one of the things that I know helps me a lot is that sometimes you have to just do it afraid. You have to do it, and with all of the fear and doubt. I remember when I started putting content online, is, hitting that post button after you
yeah,
record a video, and you hit that post button,
yeah.
was one of the most terrifying things in the world. And it was like, well, what have I done? What have I done with myself? People are gonna see me. People are gonna say something about me. People are gonna, talk about me. Maybe I slurred my words. I stuttered. I did something. I look funny on camera, and we fear
Mhm.
what we see out there. And so we get so reluctant sometimes to actually step out, because we don't want to hit we don't want to hit post on that video, or anything. We want to say, okay, I'm safe here with, some pictures, or something. And I'm using social media as an example, but that could go for anything in life. Sometimes we just don't want to hit post on that video that exposes who we are, or exposes our dream, exposes who what we want to do. And that you can apply that to, I want to go to school, I want to start a business. Well, what if I fail? Well, you may or may not fail, but if you don't try, you'll never know.
A lot of this sounds like it's really a fear of judgment, right? Like a
Yeah.
fear of what other people think, what other people will say. So, how did you get over that fear of judgment? Obviously, there's bravery to it, right? There's courage and bravery. It's like, okay, I'm just gonna do this anyway because I know what I'm doing. I know where I want to go. I know I have good content here. What I'm saying, and I want to promote it more. So I have to do this. Is that kind of your thought process, or was it more of just like, what was it like exactly?
Yeah.
Getting rid of that fear of judgment.
Yeah, it's getting to the point, and again, for me personally, it was kind of having the thought process of I just don't, it's first of all thinking of, what are people going to say, and then realizing who are people, who are these people that are going to say something, and
Mm,
you know and having, who are these friends or family members or whomever. I mean, because they're either, if they are talking about you, they're already talking about what you're doing or not doing. They're all of those kinds of things kind of come into play there, and in some cases they're not even talking about you, they're not even looking at you. And so at
mhm,
the end of the day, what helped me overcome this whole idea of being criticized or getting even negative feedback is, one, I had to be true to myself and do what I felt I needed to do, what I felt called to do. That was kind of a piece of strength, of strength there. But also it's just getting to that point of, you know, I don't care. You know,
right.
I don't, I hate to make that sound so simple, but that's really it a lot of times, is that, are those people, these imaginary people out there, adding anything to your life right now? What are they
Mm,
adding to your life? What are they, how are they helping and supporting you? Because I often hear people say, well, I won't have the support of my family, I won't have the support of this. And I'm not, endorsing like craziness, but at the same time, I
mm.
am saying that, if someone has a dream, a desire that they have, I say, go out there and begin to, fulfill it. And you can't care about what people think, because you're not going to do anything great by waiting for permission. Because I lived a long portion of my life, I was that good kid in school that waited on, permission, which that's good for all the kids listening. You want to be good in school, but that translated
Right.
into life as well, where you asked for permission. And so I got to the point where I stopped asking for permission, and to live the life that I felt God put me on this earth to live. And so when you get to that point, then you are more bold and you take more chances to be exactly who you are.
That's something I think should be talked about a lot more in, any field
Mhm.
because, fear of judgment. I feel like anybody who has actually gone and strided towards a goal, something they really wanted to do or become, they've all had to go through that fear of judgment, from when they first started. And it's kind of growing a resilience to that. Like you said, growing to become that person's like, I don't care. But not in the sense of like you don't really care, but like you can accept critical feedback when you see it and criticism.
Mhm.
But in the sense of it just you've grown strong enough to not be bothered by people's hateful comments. And obviously you can delineate when that happens.
Yeah,
Someone's just trying
absolutely.
to be mean to you or be rude. Yeah. So another thing that had helped me was something I call conditioning my mind for success. So when
Mhm.
I was 18, what something I did, which I actually like doing, and I still do it to this day, actually, just because I enjoy, doing it. But I had lived in a certain type of house,
Yeah.
and it wasn't extravagant, it wasn't luxurious or anything like that, but I drove in my little Toyota Camry to to a lot of the nicer neighborhoods, and I would, sometimes sit there at the park, and I would just look at these nice houses. I would go into these homes that have, like, like, million-dollar homes sometimes, whatever it was, and I would just imagine myself in those. I'd sit down on the couches, I would just imagine myself in that, and that did a lot for me alone because it
Mhm.
started, like, conditioning my mind to saying, "Hey, I could, have something better." While also, obviously filling my mind with, like, a bunch of, positivity, because I didn't grow up around a lot of positivity, and I don't really know
Right.
a lot of people who have that, positive environment, like, "Hey, you can do it. Keep going. Don't give up." I don't know a lot of people that grow up in that type of environment.
Mhm.
So, other than that, what about the people who feel like they're stuck in a rut? And we'll wrap it up with this, and we'll start closing.
Yeah.
So let's say someone is on their way to, they have their goal written down, they're doing it, they made progress, but then they feel like, okay, I'm stuck in a rut right now. What do I do next? What is my next move? I'm not feeling motivated right now. Where do I go? What about those people?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the thing is, I'll just share with you too. I'm right there with you. I did some of those same things. Go look at big expensive houses that you can't afford. You know,
Right.
I remember one time I was disappointed, and we have here in the Houston area the Galleria, and it's like the
Yes.
upscale. Yeah, yeah, you know what I'm talking about. And you go in one of the entrances, and the Armani store is right to your right. And I went in
Hmm.
there, and if you go into an Armani store, there's $500 t-shirts, and
Yeah.
I went in there and I felt like I can, and I was really disappointed. I had a setback, and it wasn't about being able to buy that. And it wasn't about a monetary thing, but it was like I want to be able to have the choice to do that, and it
Hmm.
opened up my horizons. But one of the things that when I feel stuck, it's kind of the same thing that I talked about earlier, is that you have to have a vision of the future. You want to think about, what do I what do I how do I see myself in the future? What do I want in the future? Because when you get discouraged, it kind of sits on you. And one of the things is that when you are discouraged, is really kind of thinking about, what I'm learning, what am I learning in this process? You know, because
Hmm.
what I think about is that you have the responsibility and the power to create your own future. And it's by what you do today.
Right.
But oftentimes we get discouraged. So how do we do that? And one of the things that gets us discouraged is that when we experience failure, we experience setback, we begin to tell ourselves this story in our head that I'm not good enough. I am, because when you're in the rut, this is what you're telling yourself. I'm not good enough. I'll never succeed. No one's going to listen to me. No one's going to give me an opportunity. I can't get that job. I'll never lose the weight. We begin to tell ourselves this story. And what I always advise people to do is begin to reframe that story. They may have told me no, but I'm going to keep working because someone's going to say yes. Change the story. I know that I'm today I'm 20 pounds overweight. In X amount of days, I will not. I will not be. Because if you can't see yourself there, you're not going to be able to get there. If you can't see the finish line, if you can't see yourself getting there, you're not going to put in the work to be able to get there. But it starts with you just really kind of reframing that story that you're telling yourself. You need to reframe it, put it in a place where you can say, I I know I'm experiencing this right now, but this is where I want to be and what I want to do in the future.
I love that, man. So with that being said, you're also a speaker as well, correct?
Yes.
So when can we expect you? Obviously, I don't believe the rest of this year will probably be, not there for you. But do you have a projected time of when we can actually hear you speaking again and doing events and stuff?
Man, well, I've enjoyed talking to you. I will say that, and I am working on
Yeah.
that right now. To be honest with you, that is one of the things that I'm really ready to get back to doing, is getting out there. One of the things that I'm finding is that people are getting really creative, and doing some online things, as well as social distanced events and different things like that. And so, yeah,
Mhm.
I'm looking early part of next year to get back out there and work with different audiences, because really, that's one of the things that I love, is being around people. Because you and I talking here, we can't see the people that are hearing this, and so you don't get to see the light go on in their head. And that's one of the things I love about
Mhm.
doing that. About, oh, I heard that point. I get it. You don't get to see that, and that's one of the things I enjoy. So I'm really ready to get back to doing that.
All right, awesome. And you also have a podcast. I believe it's called the Orson Wells Show. Is that correct, or is
Yeah,
it the Orson Wells
it is
Podcast?
the Orson Welles show. It is about life and leadership, like I talked about. and most often there's weekly episodes, and a lot of the episodes are me talking about a topic. So even some of the things that we talked about tonight, there's more detail there that or I might even have a story or different things wrapped up in there. And then also in the next few weeks, I'll be having some really great guests coming on. So that's gonna be something coming up there for the Orson Welles show.
Awesome, man. So where can people find you at
They can
on social
on
media?
social media. I'm the Orson Welles. You can find me on Instagram, and mostly on Instagram, Facebook, and of course LinkedIn, especially for you leaders out there. I share a little bit more leadership content on LinkedIn, and then also my website, theorsonwells.com.
Awesome. Any last words, Orson?
No, I would just say, I love your podcast. Thank you for having me. And in my podcast, I always talk about being exceptional, and I would say, with you working with you is just be exceptionally unleashed. Go out there. If those of you listening to this podcast, we've covered a lot of topics. Really got down into leadership, but then also, if you've got a dream, you've got a desire, it's on you, and you can do it. So go out
Awesome.
there, be exceptionally unleashed.
I love that, man. Thank you very much, Orson, for coming on. And for everybody else listening, thank you for listening. Check out my other episodes. And if you want to learn more about leadership, how to have a better life, or anything along those lines, follow this guy. Check out his podcast. He has a lot of awesome content. I already checked it out myself. And thanks again. Take care, everybody.